Hey everyone, Mrhappy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mrhappy, aka Mrhappy Mondays, a weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. I am so very patiently trying to wait for Dawn Trail. The closer it gets, the more I'm getting on the inside, because it's like a calm before the storm. You know, I don't really have a whole lot going on right now. Elden Ring's at the end of the week. That's going to eat up some of my time, and then Dawn Trail next week. So I'm going to be in kind of a Zen mode for the rest of the week. I'm going to try to get some things out, but I'm not going to stress it too much because I know what's about to happen. I know what's about to come, you know, so I'm going to let that, I'm just going to anticipate that. All right. Plus I've got my Viper cosplay coming this week, so I got to think about that and get that. There's a lot on my mind. So let's get into the Q&A. I don't want to linger on the start of this video for too long. Before that, thank you to the sponsors over on Patreon. No one has to support everyone who's there chooses to support. All of my content is available for free. There's plenty of other ways to support the channel, like the links in the description. So whatever you want to do is great. If not, just sit back, enjoy the video, ask your questions for any given week in the comments section. And with that, let's see what everyone's got for me. Hashtag Mondays with Mrhappy. Hello, Mrhappy. Hi. Doesn't seem like any question about the state of healers were asked in the media tour. Yoshi P was quoted saying that for those wanting more engaging content, they should try Ultimate. That's from like, what, a year and a half, 2 years ago at this point? Yet an Ultimate was completed on patch without any healers. Not by more than one group. Well, I don't want to diminish the efforts of the group. Good. It feels like that shouldn't have been possible to begin with. Agreed. With Endwalker's encounter design, it feels like my role is to be the target of mechanics that doesn't go on a random DPS and to throw a few OGCD heals out between my one DPS button spam for 90% of the duty. What I've seen in the media tour doesn't seem to get any better. Tanks are getting even more sustain options to reduce the needs for healers more. The dungeon was even cleared with one warrior and 3 DPS without much issue. I'm going to blow your mind. We've been doing that for like 2 expansions now. The whole way, especially in Endwalker, but no, yeah, it's been the whole 1 warrior, 3 DPS song for quite some time. But I mean, for the most part, that's only from groups that are like really prepared to do it. One, is there any sense that the development team is aware of the negative feedback about the gameplay of the healer role? Yeah, there's not much to really change. Without changing the encounter design, you can't positively impact the healer. There's nothing you would be able to tell from Media Tour that what the state of the healer role actually is for the upcoming expansion. A dungeon that was soloed or was done without a healer is literally nothing new. And in 99% of situations, every group's going to need a healer or two. Because the only way to not bring them is to very deliberately form parties in such a way that you don't need them. Which I agree, technically shouldn't be possible, but it's something that, again, 99% of people will not be able to feel. So I'm sure that they've seen plenty, but we wouldn't see any reflection of that in the media tour itself. We'll have to wait until Savage. Even the first Savage tier is probably not going to be a great tell. The first Savage tier is deliberately 10 to 15% easier than the later ones, and then the later Ultimates as well. 2, should tanks, a warrior, and DPS be getting less sustain options instead of more? That depends entirely on the encounter design. So please see my answer to 1. 3, do you think healers will be fulfilling enjoyable spot in Dawn Trail? So you know what the funny thing is? I very regularly go healer for things like extreme trials, for things like dungeons, for things like 24-mans. I do it because when I'm not on healer, I don't know if many of you feel this, but am I not the only one who's so deathly afraid of the random healers I get in the game that it makes me appreciate the good healers more? Like, yeah, in these like perfectly ideal situations where there's nothing wrong and you can just do whatever you want, and then that's when you just press the one button. Yeah, obviously there's some degree of fulfillment that needs to be improved. But I don't know about you. Aloha, I just started recording. Why did you choose to wake up now and start whining? Stop. I always feel way safer being on healer. And that, to me alone, makes me appreciate the healer role and good healers as a whole. It's one of those when you're really good at it and everyone around you is good, you look like you're doing nothing. But when anything around you goes wrong, your ability to be a good healer shines momentously. So it's literally going to be down to a question of how often those moments present themselves in, I would say, extreme trial and above content. Honestly, even normal trials. Have you ever done a normal trial in the Duty Finder? You ever done Barbaricha in the Duty Finder, or Zeramis, or like any of the normal modes that you think, oh, that's easy, that's a joke. But then you do it in normal mode and you're like, maybe this is why healers are the way that they are. Like, obviously you shouldn't cater to that, but I don't know about you, but I definitely start to appreciate when I play the role and when other people who can play the role in situations like that. And they happen way more than they probably should. And look, this follow-up question is about the no healer clear of the level 91 dungeon. Again, that's nothing new. Some of you may not have seen it before, but no healer dungeon runs, again, have been a thing for several expansions now. So, no, I don't have any opinion on it. It's literally been a thing for ages, and it's a dungeon. So it's like in the low... It's like when I solo Extreme Trials on Warrior, right? And people go, Warrior is overpowered. No, Warrior has a lot of sustain and content that doesn't do a lot of damage. The sustain is good enough to outpace it in most situations. Keep in mind, with 1 Warrior and 3 DPS, you still kind of need the packs to die in a reasonable amount of time. If you have 3 bad DPS, it goes south pretty quick, believe it or not. So, while I do think Warrior sustain, it's a little hilarious. It's arguably hilarious. You wouldn't have as good a time doing that on any other tank. Like Paladin, yeah, if you really want to stop and clemency yourself, they do have some sustain through their burst window, but you would have to stop and do that. And Gunbreaker, definitely not unless you are massacring the packs. And then Dark Knight, yeah, like you could probably swing it maybe there, but Warrior is the one that gets comfy cozy and is crazy. So maybe look less at the overall and look a little bit more at how Warrior in particular performs in these situations. Oh, also, that hashtag, the healer strike thing, is the dumbest fucking thing I've ever seen. There are so few people who remotely give a fuck. People are like, no, it's a lot of people. No, it's not. It's literally, over the years, every time I've thought a lot of people are saying something, and then I've like actually looked at the broader scope, there's like nobody who gives a shit about that hashtag. I hate to tell you. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hi. Happy. Oh, that's right. This is the 500th one. I forgot. And even last week, people were like, oh, you're going to do anything for the 500th one? You know what's funny? I didn't even realize it was like $4.99 until like way late into the video. I was like, oh, yeah. Thank you. Quick question about relic weapons, since you have experience on getting all of them. A little daunted going into this grind. Do you recommend working on one from each expansion at the same time, or do whatever duties you may get? So it depends. Eureka will fund almost all of the poetics you need. Not all of them, absolutely, but almost all of the poetics you need as a whole. So ideally what you do is you start making progress on the Zodiac weapons first. And as you work through those, anytime you need poetics, you progress through Eureka. Or if you have like a normal daily thing you do, like maybe you do hunts or roulettes and that gives you, then yeah, then you kind of just feed that in and it makes the stress on Eureka a little bit less. And then when you finish all the Zodiac weapons, which you should be trying to layer them. Like you should get some Zodiac weapons through the books. And then there's going to be steps that require specific things from other steps. So like you can kind of knock two things out at once if you're overlapping the objectives in the right way, like doing a quest that requires specific dungeons on top of doing a dungeon for like your book. Like it really depends on which quest we're talking about. And it's largely, there's like 4 repeatable quests that you have to do a bunch of times that require like King's Cakes and like a whole bunch of other stuff that you need to either collect or spend tomes on or spend Grand Company. But among them are usually some dungeon objectives. And you really want to try to double up on those when you're doing the books for the Zodiac weapon as well. And then, yeah, anytime you need poetics, dip into Eureka, make some progress there, get the poetics. Just don't ever overcap while you're in Eureka. And that's kind of like the general flow of how I did things. I also recommend finishing the Zodiac weapons before doing the animal weapons to skip 10 out of the 13 Atma grinds, the Heavensward equivalent Atma grinds, which, to be fair, are really easy. Like the Heavensward ones don't take very long at all, but why do them when you could skip them? You know, speed things up. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey there. Hi. Hope you and the cat are doing okay. Congrats on the 500th Mondays with Mr. Happy. For some reason, my brain wanted to read it backwards, say Mr. Happy's with Monday. Oops. I'm planning on playing Viper and DT. Was wondering if the Endwalker relic weapon will be... No, they never make relic weapons available for previous expansions. It also wouldn't matter. No, I take it back. I see why you would ask. Because you were thinking, oh, I'll get 3 of each of the items. No, they've never once released a relic for a new job for an old expansion. Like, for example, there's no Zodiac weapons for anything from Heavensward onward. There's no... Anima weapon for anything Stormblood and onward. There's no Eureka weapon for anything Shadowbringers. No. So no, that won't happen. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello, Happy. Hi. Hope your recovery from last week was swift. You're doing better now. Yes, I am. I had a kind of rough week in like a few other regards, but no, I'm doing all right now. While the gap closer changes to Dragoon, Dark, and Gunbreaker were because of how busy their burst is, I've also heard complaints about how gap closers doing damage comes into conflict with their use of mobility and uptime tools. I was discussing this with a friend, and he floated a solution I'm surprised no one else mentioned, giving gap closers a minimum range away. Yeah, I've heard a few people suggest that as well, so that way they do damage, but what's funny is how far you have to make that range is so much effort, it's almost not even worth. So here's the thing. If you can reasonably, between a GCD, back out of that minimum range and get the off GCD, and it's a potency gain over the potential auto attack you lose, you run into an even worse situation. Now, of course, that can be balanced around, but like, I immediately thought of that. And that goes to show you how it ends up going. Like, you'd have to make the range pretty far. And I think there's nothing wrong with doing that. But I promise you, the result of what people will come up with, the cursed tech that people will come up with to somehow find a gain in all of that is disgusting. I think it's more along the lines of the idea that some jobs should probably have damage on their gap closers and some shouldn't, because it's one of the few remaining things that isn't homogenized. Like, people keep like this is how we keep getting more and more homogenized, is because something logically makes sense, and thus we do it to all of the jobs that it logically makes sense for, and then all of the jobs end up with the same kind of use case for every single thing. And like, they want to get away from that. And if they really do, then even little decisions like this need to start being considered. Like, the main way that 14 differentiates between the jobs is your path to power. Like, do you just build to 50 gauge and then do a quick burst window? Do you have to constantly maintain a gauge that is RNG procs or has guaranteed procs? Is there ways for you to get a certain amount of gauge guaranteed in a window so that you can use at least the minimum? Like, you look at Dancer and you look at Monk, but then you look at something like Viper or Reaper, which are both, you know, the get 50 and go kind of thing. So those are the paths to power, and those are the individuality the jobs have, is like how they get to that point of power. But if they really want to move away from that, then at some point, these little things that I'm talking about right here, even the thing, like, even if some jobs had what you're suggesting and some didn't, that creates use cases that change the advantages of different jobs. So it's a tough thing to balance, but it's kind of the whole reason we're having that discussion in the first place. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey, Haps. Hi. I hope you get more rest this week. I was pretty rested. Specifically last night I didn't, but as you can tell, I got enough rest throughout the rest of the week that I'm doing all right. I played since beta on and off, but I've major anxiety about doing Savages and Extremes. Going to try to tackle that fear. My doubt is when the cooldowns don't align, what should be the best course of action? Delay until both are ready to align, or push the buttons? You have to, unless, okay, so here's the thing. You technically can wait as long as you are certain that you will not lose a use throughout the fight. However, in most cases you will, because in order to fix an alignment, you usually have to wait an extremely high amount of time. What happens if I have a melee aim to dodge a mechanic and miss the 2-minute raid buff window with everybody? So, if that's a normal thing, then other people are missing it too. That's going to be the case, because there's, right now, in Endwalker, and this is very, I have to say that, there is no point in any fight where a melee cannot do their burst window while other jobs are doing it. The closest thing you get is some strategies against like P4S, PNAX, for example, where some people don't do an uptime strat, and thus the melees will then request the non-melees to wait, 15 seconds to make sure that they can actually be hitting the boss. And stuff like that's common knowledge. But there's almost no situation where you cannot just press your 2s, where you cannot just press your 1s. And anytime where there is, it's usually such a well-known case that maybe you make the mistake and see that other people around you did something differently, and then you learn from it and you go, oh, okay, we don't do that there. A great example would be P12. In P12, you use your 1 minutes when the boss comes back in phase 1 from the little intermission where she dashes around. And then you hold your next 2-minute buff until your next 1-minute buff. So it'll come back in the middle of Super Chain 2A, and you don't do it until right around the time the tank mechanic comes at the end of 2A. And then everyone does it. That's like something that's just like, it becomes known. So when you get into these kind of fights, when you research the fights, these are topics of discussion. They're not some mysteries left to figure out that you'll have no insight into. I recommend taking advantage of that and getting insightful when you start looking into going into fights. There was a couple of questions that I kind of skipped. One of them was about like tanks wearing bikinis instead of the artifact gear. I think I talked about that recently in a video. In fact, I think I answered the group Q&A thing. So it was in the group Q&A video that I even covered that question in the first place. So I made a video about that very recently from the media tour. The other one was about, oh God, what was it? Oh, how I find the fantastic fox so easily from Fox Hollows. Just Google Fox Hollows solver, and that's it. And you'll have the answer that you need. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey, happy 500 of the series. Thank you. Doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. Small question on Black Mage and how it will change. I'm in the job, but haven't gotten too far into rating, just current extremes. I feel the need to ask what exactly is non-standard, because from my perspective, it was mainly just referring to switching elements early for the sake of mobility and planning ahead for mechanics, maybe holding a proc or two for similar reasons. Yeah, I mean, it's a little more complicated than that. And honestly, as someone who doesn't main Black Mage, I risk misrepresenting it in the most accurate light if I try to tell you. But you've kind of got the outermost layer about it right, and that you don't technically need to do all your fire 4s into your, just like, you don't need to 100% hit fire 4, fire 4, fire 4, you know, paradox, fire 4, fire 4, despair, firestar, like what. You don't ever have to do that on Black Mage, and technically you still don't, but the advantages to non-standard before came in things like, you know, quickly being able to, you know, oh, I need movement, let me transpose over for my ice paradox, and then I can use that for quick mobility. And then like you have that option and options like it throughout the non-standard rotation. And the most specific thing about it is being able to time things like your mana tick in order to make sure that you get the most out of it, like being able to swap right before a mana tick going into ice in order to get the instant tick, and then being able to utilize fire 3 efficiently, like for example using saving a fire starter to go back to fire instead of using anything else, is to know exactly when that mana tick is coming instead of trying to be predictive about it and getting right. It was all these little mana tick related bits. That's probably the best way to describe it. Is it's a lot of little game system related bits for Black Mage that allow you to, with proper timing, utilize your tools in a more efficient manner than just doing what the job kind of wants you to do regardless of your mana tick. Like, oh, I always do, you know, Blizzard 3 to go over, then a Thunder, then a Blizzard 4, and a Paradox. Instead of doing exactly what the job kind of outlines for you, you just kind of do what the bare minimum necessary is before you can get back into the other phase, or utilize swapping phases at a good time in order to better utilize the movement tools that you get from swapping from fire to ice. So there's a lot of little bits about it. And I think that there is some fair criticism, but I think a lot of it's being lost in just this whole, oh, we're losing non-standard thing. It's like, losing non-standard doesn't matter that much. It's other things that you used it for that you don't have adequate replacements for that are a problem. For example, I totally feel for Black Mages saying they want Umbral Soul at level 70. It being 76 is toxic. It was the same with Aspect Mastery in Shadowbringers. It was terrible that it was after level 70, because then when you go back down to 70, it was a terrible experience. That's just the bottom line. So something like that makes a whole lot more sense. There's also concern over the way that Thunder is procced now and not being able to play around that, not having Sharpcast, the Force procs, but the job is now giving you all those tools all the time. So then the discussion becomes about skill expression and not even about the non-standard versus standard. It's just kind of a mess. I'll wait and see till they actually get their hands on it, because I guarantee you Black Mages find some weird cursed shit all the same, because they always do, because they've always had an extremely high amount of skill expression, and I don't think having a standard rotation somehow is going to change that. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello there. Hi. Thanks for the great DT coverage. You're welcome. I was hoping you'd clarify 2 things about Pictomancer for me, as I'm really thinking about taking it through the new expansion. All right. 1, has the feel needing to stop and do super long casts during combat that don't immediately do damage. Does it make the flow of the job feel stuttering? No, but it requires fight knowledge. Very similar to Black Mage, you need to understand when your opportunities to use it are. Probably the weirdest thing was looking at like a trash pack, right? Be like, oh, you know, this trash pack has, you know, the mobs are all at like 35, 40%. I could paint another thing and then do an AoE like that, or I could just do my generic AoEs and paint between the fights. And having to make that decision, even in just a dungeon, is a little weird. But in a set fight, it's literally just going to be about the boss isn't doing anything in this window of time. I'll paint now. And then I have my movement tools and whatnot for like the normal time. And 2, how exactly do their shielding abilities interact? Okay, So I misrepresented that in my video because I didn't see that the shield from Grasa was actually a party-wide shield. I'm assuming, because I didn't get to test it because I wasn't in a party, that if any of your party members' shields break, it reduces the cooldown by 30%. Now, 30 seconds. Now, it could just be if your shield, I have to reread it. I don't have it in front of me right now. You get the 30 seconds off. So keep in mind, it's not the shield for yourself and then another shield for yourself. It's a 20% shield for you or a 10% shield for the whole party. What I didn't get to see is if having your party members break it gives you 30 seconds per party member, in which case you could instantly refund it, which is crazy, which is why I'd be shocked if it worked that way. So, very curious to see that myself, since that's one thing I didn't get to test because I misread it. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello, Happy. Hi. With you mentioning doing low item level unsync content, I'm curious if CS3 has ever stated anything on the possibility of having level unsync with min item level as a setting, so we can go back and do old content with level 90 or higher kits. We can't even get them to increase the HP of S rank hunts from old expansions to combat early pulls or people who are generally unruly with them because they're, and I quote, old content. So no, I don't think they're ever going to have any intent on doing what you just suggested there, nor have they ever really expressed any interest in. Hashtag Monday after the last pre-Dawn Trail live letter with Mr. Happy. Well, that's a mouthful. My throat is starting to swell up a little bit. Maybe I do need more rest than I thought. Let's get through this. Ayo, Haps. Hello. How's it going? It's going all right, other than apparently just like maybe I'm just a little phlegmy. I don't know. I hope you're taking it easier before another big content drop soon. Is trying to. Writing this before the live letter, I'm sure it was a good one. I mean, it was all right. 2 quick questions. Do you think they forgot about the No, they didn't forget about the previous PvP series rewards. They just haven't put them in yet, or they no longer wish to do what they said. One of the two. Who knows? We don't know because they haven't said anything. After seeing more Media Tour coverage, I'm really vibing with the new jobs and new priority highlight combos on Viper. Do you think it's a way to go for future reworks or just keep it for certain jobs? Only certain jobs. If they were going to do it for more jobs, they would have done it, but they didn't. So it clearly isn't something they plan on doing widespread. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey, oh, Mr. Happy. Hi. Got to start by saying I'm very impressed with your progress on getting fit and you're looking great. Keep it up. Thanks. My question is, do you think they would ever implement a role queue instead of queuing as jobs? No. Because I think that they've had this system for so long that the idea of reworking it from the bottom up to change how you queue. People have been asking for the ability to double queue as jobs for a long time as well. And they've acknowledged that people are asking that, but they've never gone anywhere with it. Because at the end of the day, it's such a low priority thing for them to do with a perfectly working system that I don't think they see any reason to go through so much trouble. And it would probably be a ridiculous amount of trouble to rework the entire algorithm for it versus leaving something that's perfectly functional as is and focusing on other things. So no, I sincerely doubt you'll ever see a change in that regard. All right, apologies, but like that phlegminess in me is really kicking up, so I kind of want to speed through the rest of them. I see a thank you for the 500th Q&A, sincerely for your 11 years of hard work. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I see you're someone who comes by the YouTube stream very frequently, so I'm glad to have you. Let's see. Different static teams calling out Cacbot tells for raids. I mean to start drama, but what else is exactly considered third party or cheating? Literally everything that isn't built into the game. Theoretically, you could argue Discord and whatnot even is, but I don't think they consider voice over internet protocol one because outside of the Discord overlay, it doesn't actually do anything. But it's literally anything that is third party that alters the game files or reads the game files, which is pretty much everything. So it is what it is. A lot of people use different things there. You can never be surprised when anyone uses any of the various things because they're pretty widespread at this point. Let's see, what's this one? Oh, the coffer system, something that exists for purely gaining gear. Using it for inventory management. It's not built that way. The coffer system is not built to be reversible for inventory's sake, and so I sincerely doubt they'll ever do anything. Like they would, again, it's kind of like the duty finder question earlier with the role queue. The idea that they would reverse engineer it to that capacity is unlikely. And a big thing is anything that has customizable stats or materia, it would have to be destroyed. You'd essentially have to take it all out. Any materia or optional stats. So it still wouldn't work for things like, you know, relic weapons and stuff like that. So there's a lot of other issues for it. But no, I don't think you'll ever see anything like that. Let's see. What else is here? Question. Nice cup of coffee. Let's see. Lacked animation weight on player and boss actions. That depends on which action. You ever get hit by a wave cannon on O12 phase 2? There's some weight on those things. And there's definitely some weight on some of the skills. A big one is definitely the new Dark Knight Blood Spiller combo. There's a lot of weight on that. Warrior has a lot of weight on its skills. And I definitely feel it on a handful of other jobs as well. I think it really depends on what you consider weighty or feely, because I definitely get it. And I have gotten it before more recently, but they've definitely gotten better about it over the years. Another congratulations for 500 Mondays with Mr. Happy. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's see. And then there was... Let's see. I think Dev should address Coils of Bahamut. They need to nerf Garuda Extreme level. Wait, they need to be nerfed to Garuda Extreme level so they can become a normal raid roulette. Garuda Extreme's not a normal raid difficulty. And no, they don't. Just unsync it. Just don't do it at level 50 and unsync it. There's no reason to spend the time rebalancing the Binding Coil of Bahamut just so you can do it at level 50. Or get your friends to help you unsync it and have them murder through it. There's no reason for them to do it. It's not a problem. What in-game bribe should I use in my free company to get them to help me level my jobs? Don't. Just stop being lazy. What are these questions? Just stop being lazy and stop trying to do things in weird ways. You're just making issues out of things that aren't issues. I don't even understand it. Let's see. Somebody trying to speculate on jobs in the future. I don't really do those types of questions because speculation doesn't really, like, yeah, you can do it. It's just, I don't like to really fuel that fire very much because some people like to convince themselves that something's going to be there or, you know, whatever, not. Let's see. You think they'll ever update the party UI to be more customizable? I hope so. Whether it be to change the style of it, to change the color of HP and MP bars. I have actually hoped for that for a long time. So I do hope they do it at some point. I don't think they will, but you know, I can hope for it at the very least. How do you feel about a mount where your Warrior of Light is the mount, where you just like run really fast? I think it's an animation problem. Mounts are programmed to be like an object on you. So like the wings, for example, that we're getting, they're not just wings that attach to your character. They had to create that like beam of light on the back of your, on the back of your character that act as the center point, because that's where the mount's kind of center point is. So making entirely new animations for the character is a lot of work. So I don't see them doing this. It's totally something they could do. I just think it would be lower priority for their workload that they're going to do. Let's see. I didn't see anyone trying out the one-button combo setting. It's because that's not its setting. People have drastically overestimated what that setting is. All it is the choice between skills that are one button to make them wide again. So a great example would be, I guess, is this an example? I'd have to look at the list. It'd be like divination turning into the new ending skill for Astra. I forgot what it's called. It's stuff like that. It's not taking your 1, 2, 3 combo and making it one button. That doesn't even work for 90% of the jobs. That's not a thing. The thing that you think it is was never what it was going to be, which is what I tried telling people back then. It's likely just going to be skills that are already consolidated, or common sense would dictate they should be consolidated because they require the activation of the skill before it to do that, but not your basic combo skills. And then some people look at Viper and Picto and look at that and like, yeah, but their button layout, their total number of buttons were basically designed around that concept to begin with. I do think what you're saying will happen at some point, and that in its place, there will be more buttons put so that it's not an actual lower amount of buttons to push. It's more like a similar-ish amount of buttons, but that one particular thing is condensed. I do think that'll happen at some point, but that was never what that feature was meant to do. What do you think would be a good fix for direct hit and crit? Remove direct hit, take crit damage off crit. It's too swingy. And what expansion would you like to experience for the first time again? Not Heavensward. All I know is not Heavensward. I don't know the actual answer, but not Heavensward. Because the early days of Heavensward, the first like year of Heavensward, was utter torture outside of MSQ. So definitely not that. Oh man. Let's see. Got their new stuff for cooldowns. Astra and White Mage can only use theirs as a follow-up. Yeah, they did a whole lot of weird stuff with deciding who has to tie a skill to what. Like I even mentioned that in the White Mage video, that the fact that their finisher is after Temperance, but it really is useful as a standalone skill and doesn't really make sense to be locked to within 30 seconds of temperance. I completely agree. I don't understand why they did it in some places either, but I don't, other than that, I guess that is the answer. The question is, how do I feel about that? That is how I feel, the same way I mentioned in the White Mage video sometime back. Comes the Viper, Picto to 90. Would it be faster to go to Zadnor or pre-made dungeon parties? If you have a pre-made dungeon party, that. If not, Southern Front is faster than Zadnor. Zadnor is more AFK friendly, but you have to be really, really sweaty about doing it in Bozia in the Southern Front. So keep that in mind as well. 3 DPS, 1 warrior for dungeons is definitely the way to go if you can do it, though. I'm actually doing 1 tank. I should have probably done 1 tank, 3 DPS, but just for safety, I was doing 1 tank, 1 healer, 2 DPS. So I do have a pre-made dungeon group, but it's just doing the traditional layout. Maybe our healer will change their mind and they'll decide they want to go DPS. I don't know. But yeah, 1 warrior, 3 DPS is definitely the way to go. And has been, as a reminder from earlier in the show, for some time. Concerned about the download file size and time proceeding? You'll probably be able to download it within 24 hours before. So 50 gigs in 24 hours. I'm sorry, if your internet can't do that, then yeah, I mean, you should be concerned, but I don't know how to help you. The game has to be patched up. It has to be patched and been through maintenance and then made available. They just need to make sure it's not available like 12 hours before. It needs to be like 24 hours before because it is a huge download. So hopefully that's not going to be a problem for you. How do you feel about the idea of just letting players use all their skills when they're synced down? Not a good idea. Big reason, I already see people prejudice against Sprouts and other people just for being new. Imagine if you're a level 90 player doing Sestasha and you have 3 Sprouts in your group who don't have their entire kits. Now, keep in mind, you're probably balanced to be about the same, roughly same point of power, but you're not. You're not. That person is, you're more likely to get people leaving and taking penalties on Sprout parties because they actually don't have as many skills as high-level players. I think it's going to create far more problems than it is going to solve. I think the idea that having less of your skills is annoying is not nearly as annoying as being a new player and just out of your control, people just leaving because you're new, because you don't have all of your skills. I don't think it's worth the trade-off in any capacity. Let's see, what was this one? Somebody asking about job quests. There's no point in even speculating. We're never getting job quests again. So those are done. So there's not even, I can't even entertain any ideas because you will never get them. They're done with job quests. They've been very clear about that outside of the new jobs that release as they release for just 10 levels. So I can't even entertain it because of that. Let's see. Wondering what the best jobs for supporting the team are other than healer. So it depends on what supporting the team is. Just playing well nowadays. If you're not a healer or a tank, the amount of agency you have over your entire team is basically null and void and doesn't matter in the grand scheme. Like, yeah, can you res people as red mage? Sure. Can you res them as summoner? Sure. That's kind of where it ends. Like, you just don't have any agency over the team in any other role. You just have to do your job at that point. And that is how you support the team, by not screwing up. So you can pick anything if you're trying to just get away from healer, but a tank would probably be the way to go if you actually want to have some degree of agency. Also, I think you play 11 at least somewhat. How's healing in that game? You build a metric fuck ton of stats and you either zerg while spamming AoE heals, or you essentially just single target heal bomb the tank while everybody else stays out of damage range. And that's pretty much, it's usually one of the two. Sometimes it's a little bit of both. Sometimes you got to throw out that big Curaga or something in that capacity because the team gets hit by something that's not avoidable. But for the most part, you're literally just looking at one of those two options. And then you have some abilities to help with certain situations occasionally. Oh my God, this person wrote so much. Have reworks previously received such widely negative reactions? It's literally the same every single expansion. That's why I'm so null to it. I just hear whining and complaining with some real criticisms mixed in between that honestly, it's noise at this point. I don't even want to listen to it. Let's see. I've heard a lot of people say older ultimates are receiving weapons for jobs that release. This is from my interview. It's Picto and Viper are getting ultimate weapons for the old ultimates first, and then they're going to go back and do the other ones over time. There's no set timeline on that, so there's no like promise that it'll be on launch or 0.1 or whatever. That's just what their plans are. But that was in my interview, so yeah, people have been saying that, and it is accurate. Is your experience with each of them compared? Fucking hate soloing Palace of the Dead. Heaven on High is really hard on the top floors, but far more stomachable. And EO is super easy, but it's so slow on the early floors. Heaven on High is by far the best concise solo experience. Palace of the Dead is the most balanced one. It's just agonizingly boring for so many floors that it can be a little unnerving to have to do it so many times. There are so many questions here. What do you think they could do to make the job feel more alive instead of yet another Bahamut? Just make more of its abilities summoner themed. Like if Fester was like lightning, or I know they're changing it to necrotize, but like let's say instead of necrotize it was electrotize, and it was like a mini Ramu Eggy firing the Fester equivalent. Like little things like that would keep it exactly the same function, but would feed the summoner flavor a whole lot more. So that's definitely a big thing, is making all of its abilities feel summoner-esque and not I summon stuff and then I use abilities based on the summon I just used, and that's it. I think they need more abilities that kind of represent the summons that we don't have as big summons, or add more big summons that aren't just another Bahamut. Let's see. It was a mention of our current Unreal being the hardest one yet. Yeah. So here's the thing. Sephiroth, I think, is harder than Thornton, and we've been through that already. But Thornton is regularly regarded to be the hardest extreme. I always say that it's because we were really, really bad by the time, like during Heaven's Ward, we were just really bad as players. Like as a whole community, we were just way worse than we are now. You know, we just didn't have that degree of challenge that more people were tackling. We didn't have the player base to even do it at that point. And so Thornton was wrongly perceived as insanely difficult on release. And he really wasn't. Sephiroth, in my opinion, was way harder on release than Thornton was. And that's as someone who was experienced and was doing hardcore content like Gordius, Midas, all that shit. So, yeah, no, I don't agree. I think Thornton's kind of a gimme right now, and it's way overhyped. So, yeah, I feel you on that one. What are your thoughts on the upgraded healer AoEs? I didn't really care. It's like they wanted to upgrade something, so they upgraded those. I was like, whoop-de-doo, cool, new animations for skills. I mean, to be fair, Consultation and Accession, those good, especially Consultation. But yeah, Medicate 3, it's useful on occasion. Don't get me wrong. There's times where I like throwing out a Medicate 2 instead of doing, like, you do Medicate 2 Assize and you just leave it be and you just call it a day. But most of the time, it's just lay down Asylum and use a Lily instead and not Medicate 2. It depends on the fight. Do you think we'll visit Solution 9 before, during early MSQ? No. It's going to be like level 87, 88, 89, somewhere around there. Let's see. It's possible to swim in the water in the beaches of Toral. I don't think it was. I didn't try, but I don't think I was able to do that. I don't think you were able to do that. I think they even mentioned that you weren't able to do that. Plains level Viper 80 to 90. Pre-made dungeon group. Let's see. We have defeated the biggest bad. How can any other upcoming opponent or event be deemed a threat to us? Because we use the power of God and anime to beat them, and not every single thing we're going to have the power of God and anime to beat them. So you always have to remember, it's not about a bigger threat. It just has to be another threat. Like, for example, when we beat Nidhogg, we weren't using our own power. We temporarily borrowed the power of Hraesvelgr. If we didn't have Xenos, good chance we wouldn't have beaten the Endsinger. Like, there's a lot of like outside factors that you have to consider. It's not just us beating A beating B. It's like A beating B because of C or something like that. Let's see. Do you know if the idea of bringing the old ultimates to level cap were brought to devs' attention? They'll never do it. They've thought about it. They've teased the idea because people have been like, yeah, well, you do that, and they give the whole like, oh, we'll never say no to that kind of answer. The amount of work to do it is astronomical. It is not just bump the numbers. It has to go through like a constant QA back and forth, essentially the same amount that a normal ultimate would go through. And they're not going to want to do that. So you may get it one day, but I wouldn't hold on to much hope. You'd sooner see like an old Savage, which might be a little easier to do, and only a little easier than doing something like an ultimate. What do you think they could do to improve the Arcadian? The bosses just need to be fun. We need to not have a crap third boss in the second tier. This can't keep happening. I remember you mentioning hating Red Mage. Why? Because I do. I think it's boring and useless and weak, and the only thing it's good for is a res, and you only need reses when everyone's messing up, and if everyone's messing up, you're going to die anyway, so your Red Mage is useless. 3, why the choice to cosplay Viper? Because the Warrior of Light's Viper. So I want to cosplay as the Warrior of Light. He's a Viper. Do you think they'll ever remove the level sync off job traits similar to role actions? No, but I think that's a nice kind of in-between. Instead of taking the skills, like just allowing all your skills to be unsynced, that's a little in between. I could see that more likely than just letting them letting you keep all of your skills at the low levels. Yeah, I don't think they'll ever do it, to be clear, but I think that's more likely than just what we mentioned earlier. With the item stacking things shown off, do you think it might mean they're going to remove the unique tag? No, I don't think they were actually filling anything with items, because those did not actually look like the item icons we have in game. So I wouldn't be too hopeful about that whole Twitter thread thing that they had. Are there any other jobs in the game that also struggle with their identity or did struggle with it when they debuted? Samurai, being a pure DPS, really struggled. A lot of people wouldn't accept it because Black Mage struggled with that same thing before, so it just kind of inherited it. But other than that, I don't think so. Dancer was really weak, but not even really weak on its initial release. It was really weak in Endwalker, but I wouldn't even consider that the same kind of struggle. It's like a completely different thing. Let's see. Where is it? It's getting how is it easy is it to get into current EX trials without a static? Easy, just join party finders. Wait, I just want to know how the DPS check became easier in the old ultimate. The 6-man UCOB was wait, I'm pretty sure I answered this. Our potencies went up. Like, we have higher potencies than we used to. We play better and we have higher potencies. I'm almost certain that's what I answered last week for the exact same thing. Go through some other... I noticed some fates had bonuses to the bicolor gemstone reward. Can we finally expect an increase as well? Yeah, I think they were worth like 24 or 26 bicolors. And that's specifically for Dawn Trail ones. Right now, Endwalker is 14 and Shadowbringers are 12. So it just looks like the Dawn Trail ones are going to be worth a lot more, which is cool. Who were the winners and losers coming out of Media Tour? The only major loser was Summoner. Like, everyone else like has like ups and downs. Summoner is the loser. Okay. Of everything, Summoner was the loser. Let's see. How do you think the all selfish comp will be with White Mage, Sage, Samurai, Viper, Black Mage, Machinist? Yo, I'm not gonna lie. If everyone in that party is really good, it's probably the best comp. Like, unironic. Okay, no, White Mage, Sage is definitely not the best comp. But like in terms of raw kill speed and playability, if you are not stressed for like Astro's mitigation tools, or like you don't want to run double shield and you wanted like a traditional comp, that might be one of the best comps that you could get unironically, if everyone on the team is just a Giga Chad gamer. That's down to the numbers, but I wouldn't be surprised. Oh my goodness, there's so many questions. Will positional survive 8.0? At this point, I don't even know. How do you think Crit Savage could be made to be more replayable? Detach the weapon from needing an actual tome weapon and make sure you add actual rewards to Criterion Normal, and then allow Criterion Savage to have the same drops as normal plus the additional drops. The fact that I can't get the coins for the mount from normal mode while doing Savage is ridiculous. And then if you add loot to Criterion Normal, then make completing Criterion Savage also reward that same loot, so there's a bit of a double up on there. So definitely do that, bare minimum. Talk about making the jobs a bit more hard again. I see they're making Reprisal longer. Yeah, and they said there's a reason for that. They said in easier content, it'll just feel easier to use, but in harder content, you may want to more carefully consider how you use it. Oh, man, let's see. Let's see. Wait, I'll be making a new character on one of the new worlds for the 15 days free subscription. Oh, you know, I forgot that you got that. Will the 15 days push the subscription out or not? If you earn the bonus time, I'm pretty sure it extends your subscription. But I have no actual experience with it, so I can't say for certain. Let's see. Happened to the Dragoon rework. We got it. They just didn't rework it as much as people thought they would. That's all there. Let's see. Another healer strike question, which is... I'm not going to call the person... By the way, if you're asking about the healer strike, you're not dumb. But the healer strike hashtag is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in this community. You have no impact. Nobody cares. Anyone who wants to play a healer, which is a lot of people who enjoy playing healer, are going to do exactly the same thing they were always doing. In fact... Funny thing, I believe the person who made the forum post has never even done an extreme trial. That's crazy. What are they striking against? They barely play the game. Oh my God. Anyway, that is going to be a wrap for this week's episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. Tried to get through it short, and then there was a billion speed round questions. Good thing I swapped to the speed round because I was like, oh, I need to get through this. And then there was so many that I got through. But anyway, hopefully I got through most of them and I didn't miss too many. But thank you for watching. If you have a question, ask it in the comment section of the video below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. And I will see you for the next one. The next one will be 501, but it'll also be the last weekly Q&A before Dawn Trail. That's exciting. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, bye-bye.